The following readings are from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. Each week we read from both scriptures as prescribed by Yoganandaji and by his guru Sri Yukteswarji, who was guided by Babaji to compare the two scriptures to show the same underlying truths between them. This first passage is from the Bible. Jesus said, "The hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth." Swamiji writes, "To worship God in spirit and in truth means to commune with him in inner silence." Jesus' message here is unequivocal, especially when seen in context. For he was replying to a question put to him by the woman of Samaria, who had asked him to tell her in what place it was better to worship God, in Samaria or in Jerusalem. Jesus made it clear in his reply that one should worship God above all inwardly, and outwardly only as an expression of inner devotion. It wasn't that he denied the value of outward worship. He was saying, rather, that the benefits of worship of all kinds depend on the depth of feeling a person infuses into his devotions. Traditions may be found in every religion to the effect that holy vibrations exist in certain places on earth. These vibrations may be attributed historically to the fact that miracles may have been performed there, or to the one-time presence of great masters. Or they may simply be the result of centuries of devout worship in those places. Once a place becomes impregnated with spiritual power, its vibrations may linger on for centuries. Jesus himself met the woman of Samaria at Jacob's well, an ancient site that was still considered holy in his day. Excuse me. Yet his reply to her contained a universal teaching. "Believe me," he said, "the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father." Outward pilgrimage, he was saying, without corresponding inner communion with God, is of only temporary value. The important thing is our inner relationship with the Lord. When visiting holy places, we should tune in sensitively to their vibrations and maintain a deeply prayerful attitude. Our heart's feelings must be stilled to receive divine blessings. Thus we may in fact gain lasting benefits from pilgrimage. Above all, however, what Jesus recommended was the, quote, pilgrimage to our divine source within. Wherever the body is, what we must do is worship the Father in spirit and in truth. We should make a portable altar of our hearts. Outward pilgrimage may help to reinforce and deepen our attunement with God, but his favorite altar is the heart purified, cleansed of attachment and desire, uplifted to his love. To worship God in spirit means to rise above body consciousness. This one does in deep meditation. To worship God in truth means not to remain satisfied with mere intellectual concepts about him, nor yet to accept the cloudy, illusory visions and, quote, inspirations that well up from the subconscious. To worship him in truth means to persist in meditation until he lifts us into actual ecstatic communion with him. The validity of superconscious experience can be tested and verified by every sincere devotee. It will have transforming power over his life. Divine experience, unlike the shadowy mental images that are inspired by the subconsciousness, are unlike the passing peace one feels in unlike the passing peace one feels in holy places, leaves nothing and no one that it touches ever the same again. Jesus here then is saying, if you want to be the kind of worshipper that God himself is seeking, out of his vast family of devotees, set aside time every day for direct, superconscious contact with Him in meditation. Enter into the silence of inner divine communion. The holiest of holies is the inner sanctuary of the heart. Thereon should be kept ever burning the sacred lamp of fervent devotion to the Lord. This next passage is from the Bhagavad Gita. Sequestered should he sit, steadfastly meditating, solitary, his thoughts controlled, his passions laid away, from every craving for possessions freed. From every craving for possessions freed. The devotee must take time occasionally to be alone with God. Only as his awareness deepens of God's silent inner presence can the waves of his mental and emotional restlessness be stilled, and the boat of his life be steered serenely to the divine shores. Paramhansa Yogananda often said, seclusion is the price of greatness. How long ought one to sit in meditation? A good rule is to meditate as long as one can do so with joy, or with keen interest and alert attention. One ought never to sit long hours merely to test his endurance. Nor ought one to sit long if it means meditating absent-mindedly. Far more important than the duration of meditation is its intensity. Absent-mindedness and what Paramhansa Yogananda called lackluster devotion are formidable barriers to spiritual progress. Even 5 minutes of deep meditation would be preferable to sitting a whole hour if all one did during that hour was watch the clock. In fact, a good practice is to sit as though the time available were indeed only 5 minutes. From the moment you assume your meditative posture, enter at once into the heart of your spiritual practices. Resolutely set aside all restless thoughts. Refuse to move even a muscle. Discipline your body, your mind, your emotions. Offer them up to God. Concentrate your entire being on the upward flow of your spiritual aspiration. An hour indeed is little enough time out of the day to give to God. What if He were to forget you even for a second? You would cease to exist. Think how many hours one gives to sleep every night. The commonly recommended norm is 8 hours, though in fact one can get by on fewer. For another 8 hours, more or less, one works. That leaves another 8 hours for eating, for talking with others, for traveling to and from work, for relaxation. Out of this third segment, can we not set aside at least 1 or 2 hours for God? And out of the 8 hours people devote to subconscious sleep, can they not devote 1 or 2 to the much deeper rest of superconsciousness? The sincere seeker should make it a practice to meditate at least 1.5 hours every day. Better still, he should make it 1.5 hours twice a day. This recommendation, however, is for those especially in whom the meditative habit is already established. Beginners generally would do well to meditate less. They should discipline themselves first to intensity. Only after achieving intensity will they find long meditation beneficial. In any case, one should allow his taste for meditation to grow naturally. Never should he force it. The more deeply he experiences divine joy in his soul, the more he will want to meditate deeply and long. He won't need urging from anyone. The longer he meditates with deep concentration at that point, the better. Even the meditative novice feels that he can relate better to others and understand and help them more deeply. Meditation even intensifies the enjoyment one experiences through the senses. After deep meditation, the world seems filled with new wonder and beauty. Colors appear more intense. Music thrills one more deeply. One returns to outward awareness far more refreshed than after a deep sleep. And all things seem vibrant with joy, and the more deeply one loves in the joy of God within. The first step toward divine union is to spend some time alone with God every day, sequestered, as the Gita puts it here, one's thoughts controlled, one's passions stilled. This is the inward pilgrimage. It is the straight and narrow path to liberation. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. And, the title of this reading is What's the Best Way to Worship God? And so what's wonderful is the line in there where Swamiji wrote that it doesn't matter which religion we pick, meaning everybody is born into a religion or converts to a religion or whatever they do based on their internal likes, dislikes, their culture, whatever way they've been raised. And so there is no choose this one over that or choose this over that. There's so much war going on in the world right now of one religion versus another. And so, it's just wonderful how Master's teachings says basically we can be tolerant of everybody. Of course, maybe personally we might say, well, mine's the best, but really we're saying mine is the best for me to reach God. And that's the end goal of all of these religious things. Every religion has a mystical part of it that has some sort of meditative quality, some sort of meditation involved, and some sort of liberation to have union with the divine. So intellectually, that's true for many religions. But most of all, what we do is we want to find our own. We want to find that path which guides us. But we don't have to think that ours is the best, or even there are paths within paths. Many gurus have multiple organizations that are with them. It's whatever you feel most attuned to go to, where you feel that you fit in with that vibration and that vibration fits in with you. That's the most important thing. But the even more most important thing is a surprising answer. What is the best way to worship the divine? Which religion do we pick? Master, in fact, and Swamiji's rites of Master's teachings, we just go inward. That is the best way. And to have that portable altar inside our hearts that we can take wherever we go to meditate and to touch the divine and drink the living water, as that song is earlier talking about, the living water of the divine, that we can find that peace, find everything. I love how in the Gita reading, the second reading that Dharmarajan read, how straightforward the Gita is about this is how you meditate, period. There's no interpretation. It is mystical. Meditation is mystical. There are deeper meanings to everything in the Gita. It's not so straightforward that just any mind can comprehend. However, it is certainly straightforward in many ways. But it's nice to see that, as Babaji asked Sri Yukteswarji to do, compare scriptures from the writings, the scriptures of Christ versus the scriptures of Krishna, that both conclude the best thing to do is to meditate and bring your inner altar with you wherever you go, and to sip the deep waters of the divine, the living waters of the divine into our souls. And it's just such a beautiful way to say it. Let's see. The other important thing that is said in that reading is when we go on pilgrimage, of course, they're saying the most important pilgrimage is inside, but that there's nothing wrong with going on outward pilgrimages as well. But what many people can probably admit to is going to a sacred site, getting off the bus, running around very quickly, saying, okay, I've touched it, and not really, again, drinking in the vibration, just like I did it this many times around, and now I've done it, and now Shani is going to be kind to me for the next year, or whatever it's going to be. Really what we want to do is really soak in the vibration of the places we do go on pilgrimage. Sit there, meditate. Don't just go by, if you do this outwardly, therefore you'll get this blessing. Is that really what we believe? Is that really what Master is talking about? No. We have to find that deep inner truth for ourselves. If, on the other hand, we have a deep relationship with Shani and we hear in our intuition, yes, Shani is asking me to to go to this temple and to really maybe appreciate all the difficulties he's brought me, and also, guide me so that when you do bring a difficulty or when a difficulty comes into my life, help me maneuver it, help me work with it, help me learn the lessons I need to learn from it. That's really the lesson of Shani. It's not about, here's a bad thing that's happened, now deal with it, and now life is, up in arms and everything is just difficult in life. These things, we're here for a school experience. We're here to learn. The Master would often say, but think about the drama you see on a movie screen, the highs and the lows. How would life be interesting if we didn't have those? And so we have to, on some level, accept in an unemotional way the positive and the negative that happens to us, and to really try and, rather than look at it as good and bad, we look at it instead as, okay, this has come in, this energy has come in, how do I deal with this energy? That energy has come in, how do I deal with that energy? And really it's just about dealing with energies. And also, as soon as we go deep into our spine in meditation, we are much less going to swing, allow these experiences to make us swing left or right with it. Very often a bad thing will happen and we go, ah! And then a good thing happens and we go, ah! So it's a life of, ah, ah, ah. And so what do we want to do instead? We want to try and stay that middle. Now that doesn't mean dullness or, it doesn't mean dullness. It means that we really tune into the divine in every case. And we find when we tune in nice and deeply that, just as Master says, as the Gita says, through the crash of waves through the crash of breaking worlds. Really? Yes. Through the crash of breaking worlds, I stand in my center. That means no matter what's going on, we really make our first priority to just go inward and then say, what is going on? What is going on? What am I supposed to get from this? There's a lot of scary things happening in the world right now. And, even in the north right now with those tensions. And so we have to just try and find that center. And first, before we react to any very difficult thing, before we react, or maybe we react and then we say, oops, I better go meditate on it. But in any case, try and have sitting in that stillness to really feel the true security that there is with the divine, the true inner joy there really is inside the divine, whether there's an outer happiness or not, that we really can touch that experience of the divine no matter what is going on. And that brings that comfort. It's the experience of it that brings the comfort, not the theoretical knowledge. Well, Master said I should be feeling inner joy, so I feel inner joy. It's not that. We have, our homework is to feel that inner joy. That's our homework. When we have our meditation, our homework is to really try and say, what do you mean by that inner joy? That joy that comes without any kind of outward thing. It's not the new car. It's not the job promotion. It's not that someone looked at me and now I, get something from that. It's nothing like that. It's not an outer thing. It's just that inner thing that we can enjoy. And so, all of the religions have that inside of them. And the people, who do we admire most? We admire the people who are calm through different situations. Think of the wisest person you might know in your family. Why does everyone like him? Because he's just calm when difficult things happen. And when we're calm, that's when we can find those solutions that we really need. We're going to show, after I give this talk, the video that I had posted in the group, in one of the groups, or two maybe, about Jyotish and Devi talking about the world events going on right now and what we can do, how we can feel our own inner sanctum during these times. Of course, no one can predict the future, but there's so many stories of people who had meditation and spiritual community who did well through difficult times. There's some Japanese, religious community that was going on, and they meditated there, and that bomb went off that the U.S. put on Hiroshima or the other one, and they survived. They were meditating deeply. Something happened. It was very miraculous that they were this spiritual community, and like the worst thing you could ever imagine happened around them, and they survived. So, that is just astounding. That's a story from Master. So even during the crash of breaking worlds, which that literally is, these people found that comfort. And, periodically when you read things, Master did predictions for the future, and Swamiji has spoken about it as well. Things about, don't worry, you'll be protected. Well, how do we interpret you'll be protected? We want to think, I'll be just fine in this world. But protected could also mean we have a quick exit. We have completed the lessons we're supposed to complete, and then we'll either come back or we won't, depending on what we've done in this life and our karma. But, protected might just mean, we also exit, but perhaps in a calm way, or exit in a way that is okay. When we go on to the other side, we're really just taking off this overcoat of this body, and we are going into spirit in that way. I'm not going to belittle anything. And it's a big deal to us on this side. Master said in the astral, when there is a death on earth, in the astral, there's a huge celebration. Welcome back! And then, but when in the astral someone pops into a human body from the astral, there's a funeral. That's what Master said. So, it's all a different difference of perspective, isn't it? And so, it's also really amazing how these scriptures that were written, like I said, 2,000 years ago in Kali Yuga and 3,000 years ago, there's still guru-disciple relationship. There's still questions about what does this mean, what does that mean. It's just amazing how, the truth of the scriptures, that truth carries through all of these yugas that we have. At some point we'll do a class on the yugas. But, the other beautiful thing that he talks about is seclusion is the price of greatness. And what does that mean? First of all, you can guess, what does seclusion mean? Am I just going to a cave and just sitting there and, meditating the whole time and suffering somehow, or putting myself through tapasya? It's not necessarily that. So, there's a very well-established habit of seclusion at Ananda that we talk about periodically. There's a little booklet called Seclusion is the Price of Greatness that we often have in our boutique, which we have to reprint it. And it talks about how to do a seclusion. And first of all, the first step is getting away from other people. How? How do you have to figure that out? How long? Well, start out with just 4 hours. Just say, okay, everybody, I'm going to put a sign on the door that says, don't bother me for 4 hours. And I'm going to be alone without talking to anyone, without looking at my phone, without looking at the computer, without anything. Maybe, though, you can bring in a spiritual book or two, read some poems of Master from Whispers from Eternity, do a round of meditation, learn a new chant. Then after your meditation, read a little bit more, do another round of meditation, however long you feel to do that. And try and just do spiritual practices during that 4 hours and ask people to please not knock on the door. Another option is maybe you have to go to a hotel or someplace where you can do that. And so it's very wonderful to be able to have that opportunity to seclude. We actually do a seclusion once a year for a week, and that just means being focused for a week and in seclusion. It's probably time to do that at some point. So, you can do it as much as you feel to for as long as you feel to, but what I've always found from seclusion is I get much more rejuvenation inside myself after a seclusion rather than just a vacation that lasted the same amount of time. Now, vacation's important too. We have to have fun. It's an important part of life. We have to have relaxation in that way. That's an important part of life. We have to have balance in that way. But of course, vacation doesn't have to exclude God or anything like that either. But experiment with it. Experiment with that going deep inside yourself just for a while. Some people are so pulled on by their family they just can't. Well, can you get in the car and say, I'll be back in an hour, I have to go shopping. Okay, shopping is okay for you to do by yourself. Go ahead and go do that. And then just park somewhere or go to a quiet cafe or go anywhere that is not with the situation where you're normally just being continually pulled on. And allow yourself to have that mental break where rather than feel that material pull of others, we instead draw that energy inside and draw it up to the spiritual eye and just really feel only that, not all the other pulls. We prayed to the divine, help me to just let go of everything right now. I'm taking a mini vacation, a mini seclusion, and I'm going to just feel my inner self during that time. So the other thing that Swamiji wrote about in this from the Bhagavad Gita, after the Bhagavad Gita reading, was about how long do we meditate. And it first starts out with, do as much as you can, as you enjoy, and everybody kind of relaxes and said, oh, how wonderful, I only have to meditate 5 minutes if I only need that. And then later on it says, so a serious devotee, though, meditates 1.5 hours a day, or even better, 1.5 hours 2 times a day. And so then we go, oh, okay, I guess I'm that one. I'm the serious meditator. If you've been working on getting Kriya or you have it, you're now considered a meditator who does this now for the rest of your life. But when we're teaching the core classes that lead up to meditation, it's nice to see. Some people have that inner fire, that inner drive. They just have a natural ability to just sit and meditate, and what's the big deal? I think they have like a really healthy shani in their astrological chart that gives them the perfect discipline to just do all of that whenever, as you should. Of course, who wouldn't? This is what we do, What's the problem? And so then the others are the rest of us who have to develop a habit, develop a way to work with ourselves, to stick to that habit, to develop a routine is very important. These are things tried and true ways of establishing a meditation routine by making sure we try and do it every day at the same time. That really helps. And then also in the beginning especially, try and develop the habit of meditation out of the desire to do it. Especially when someone is new, then it's like, meditate till as long as you feel joy. That's a very wonderful piece of advice for meditating. Meditate as long as you feel joy. And so what happens when we're meditating when we feel joy, then we want to meditate again and feel that joy again. And I've seen all sorts of different devotees over these years, and some are like, well, I'm just meditating for the sake of meditating. See how well I can hold my body still? Can everyone see that? See how deep I'm going? It's like, oh, please, don't do that. Nobody cares, Everyone here is not here to be seen by others. They're here to have the inner experience. Who cares about what others think about your meditation? It's a way of life. It's a part of life. You don't need a pat on your back for meditating because you want peace in your life. You don't suddenly become a guru because you've meditated for an hour a day for a year or something like that. Nobody wants to do that anyway, be a guru. So we have our guru. And so anyway, we have to get our attitude in the right direction. And we also have to then approach meditation from this, I call it a way of kindness with ourselves. If we are meditating with kindness towards ourselves, it means we say, okay, I might have been busy in my mind during that meditation, but I did it. And we just can't judge our meditation based on what we in our minds perceive. We just can't. Because every time we dip into meditation, we're touching our soul, whether we feel restless, whether we have endless thoughts, no matter what. All those thoughts and restlessness, it's almost like a challenge for us to judge ourselves. And in actuality, it's all part of the process. It's all part of the process to have endless thoughts during meditation. It's just the way it is. The brain, what does the brain do? The brain thinks. So we're training our brain through regular meditation, And we're also trusting that as we're meditating, something deeper is happening than what we're perceiving. And we know it is, because when we're done meditating, what do? We feel more peace. How did that happen? All we did was sit there and have thoughts that moved through our head. Well, we did our techniques. We know that that helps also. We hopefully had some devotion when we sat in the silence. We're following what our guru tells us to do. And then we are feeling better afterwards. And when we don't do it, we feel worse. And the more we don't do it, the guiltier we feel, the harder it is to come back to it, the more we punish ourselves. And so, that's one of the purposes of having so many Kriya initiations in a year, is you just go and you rededicate yourself and move forward. And, we're just not perfect. And that's not what the divine is asking us to be, perfect. What is perfect? We don't know. Perfection is not really what's going to bring us to the divine in the end, except a perfect love for the divine, which is just defined by ourselves. It means one-pointed, a one-pointed love for the divine, where slowly but surely in meditation, we are training our energy to go into the spine and up, which helps us to withdraw from the world in terms of just being pulled on by everything in the world. We gain a spine. I can always feel after someone has gotten Kriya and has been practicing it for a while, you can feel their spine. The room will feel at a Kriya retreat like just a bunch of spines sitting upright, because we've all learned to withdraw the energy into the spine and relate to the world from that spine and from that sense of peace you get when you do pull into the spine. It doesn't mean at all that you don't interact with the world and do your duty and do your dharma. That's all there. But the stronger you have a spine, the less pulled on you're going to be by people who try to get you off, who say nasty things, who, fill in the blank about our difficulties with people. And then you'll know what that is. But if you have a nice strong spine and keep meditating and keep building that spine to be stronger and stronger, we gain this magnetism. And not just meditation. Remember Master said, Kriya plus devotion is spiritual mathematics. And that, for anyone without Kriya, you can say Hong Sa plus devotion and energization and everything else that we do. But that meditation practice plus devotion is spiritual mathematics. That's what gets us to the divine. And we can measure that by how much love is in my heart. And today's reading from Affirmations for Self-Healing, I recommend everybody get that book. It has a affirmation for every week of the month, or every week of the year. And so you can open the book up. What is it today? It's kindness. And then for the next week, you can contemplate that. You can do that affirmation for a week. You can really feel it. And that was one of the first books we translated into Tamil as well, and are continuing to work on translations. So this affirmation of kindness is so important. It's not something that every society necessarily values. Right now there's this wave of uncompassion and negativity in the U.S. This is where we're from. We're watching this happen, saying, what is going on? Anyway, I'm not going to get political, but you can see by people's actions a lot of violence is happening towards other people, and it's just heartbreaking. It is not kind. It is the opposite of kindness. And so it's not being valued right now over there, not by everybody, but just, the loud few. And so, if you grew up in a family where you someone said, just watch out for what's your own and try and get to the top of everything. And then kindness was not necessarily taught to you. But you can learn kindness. You can experiment with kindness. You know, sometimes people think kindness means you're weak. It's not that at all. It takes great strength to be kind. And so, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean we're wimps and we don't stand up for what is right. But you can stand up for what is right in a kind way, you know, rather than slap someone with your words or stab them with your words. Master said our words can be like knives and stab at people. And so, you know, we can learn to not use our words as knives. And there's nothing more strong than a calm person who says the truth, rather than an upset person who lashes out and says something bad to someone. So we want to be that calm person who wants to speak the truth and also have it come from kindness. You know, have that kindness there, even if we can't necessarily say all the kind things that we think means kindness. Kindness can mean not stabbing someone with our words. Kindness can mean that person can't hear what I'm saying right now, so I'm not going to say it. You know, they're not ready to hear what I would actually like to say. It would feel too hurtful to them, and they wouldn't learn from it. So I'm going to take the kindness route, and maybe they need to learn a few more lessons on their own by tripping over their own feet and doing all the things that I would maybe say, don't do that, don't do this, because it'll lead to your unhappiness. But if they don't listen to us, what can we do? We can let them make their mistakes. If you've said all you can to someone and they still continue to be difficult and unkind and basically jerks in life, they're not going to listen to you. They don't care what you think. And so you can just kindly take a step back, allow them to do what they're doing. If you have to defend your turf, maybe you have to from time to time. And then don't make it your job to just worry about that person and what they're doing. Even if it's your own child, that's the hardest thing we've seen people have to deal with, is when their child is caught up in very difficult circumstances. And, you know, it's hard for every single person in the world. It's not just an India issue at all. Every person who has been a parent and has to deal with like a mentally ill child or an addicted child, or there's all sorts of ways that children can get themselves in trouble once they're adults or things like that. And what can the parent do, especially once they become adults? You know, these new adults have to kind of make mistakes. Setting boundaries is helpful. Saying, no, I won't do this, I won't do that for you. And maybe that's the best thing for them. So anyway, it's not an easy circumstance. Master doesn't give us easy circumstances. He said, you don't get strong fighting babies. So we know that to be true. Every single one of us knows that to be true. You don't get strong fighting babies. And but there is plenty of time to feel divine joy. And as Swamiji was saying, look, there's 24 hours in a day, and maybe you sleep 8, but you can get away with less. And then another 8 hours to be fully engaged with others. What are you going to do with the other 8 hours? Well, can't you just dedicate that to feeling your own inner joy? Why do we avoid it? You know, it's good to look inside yourself. Why am I avoiding it? Now, only contemplate that for a while. And after a little while, you say, if not now, when? Now. So, and you just do it. I remember when I was very, very young, I was only starting to get on this path. I met with a Buddhist Lama. I think he was Buddhist. Yeah. And he said, I was telling him I felt restless and had a hard time meditating, and he said, just sit. Just sit. And so it was like, okay, just get yourself to the chair or the floor, your pillow, your zafu, your asan, and sit. Just sit. And then you have no choice but to meditate after that. Just sit. So it was very good advice when he said that. And I can't say I've followed it my whole life in a perfect way at all. So we each have had our ups and downs with meditation and gaining that that way to really have it stick. And so we just have to find how, given my temperament, given who I am, how can I make meditation stick? Don't look at other people. You can never know really what they're doing. They might say, I meditate this long and I'm perfect at it. But, okay, that attitude, first of all, proves something's off. On the other hand, we can't just look at other people and say, I wish I could do it like them. I wish I could do it like them. We can only do it like ourselves, and that's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of our Guru. Our Guru says, I love each and every one just as they are. And so we have to be the best of who we are and express the best of who we are. And it has nothing to do with anyone else. There's a very persistent saying in India, what will others think? And sometimes sticking to this path, you can get criticism for others, by others, and lots of arguments about what you're doing. But if we just stick to it, very often we win them over with our better behavior. If this path is working for you, you actually are becoming more calm. You actually are angry less. You actually are not harassing people. You are instead learning to go inside yourself and find that peace, and then you have your purpose of life. Your work in life. What am I doing? What is my work? I have my service of life. And for all people, no matter what they're doing, it's to help others, not harass. So if meditation is really working for you, those are the qualities you will find building up in you. And we see it in so many, how they just keep getting more better and better. Everybody's heart gets massaged by Master, and their own perfect, unique love for the divine radiates out like a bunch of flowers, but wildflowers. No one wildflower is like another wildflower, is it? We're not all like the perfect roses that might look a certain way. Even if you get up close to a flower, you will see its unique way of being. So we're all wildflowers expressing the divine in our own way, and we're guided by our Master in such a beautiful way. Thank you, everyone.